Let's jump in. We got a lot of stuff to cover. Let's get going. I want to give you a little bit of an overview about things we're going to be discussing. And first off is today, you have the tools to make great applications for small devices. You can build an application for a Pocket PC. You can build an application for a Windows CE device. And if you download an add-in from the smartphone SDK, you can also use Visual Studio 2003 to build applications for a smartphone. The second point I want to make, and it's sort of a theme going throughout the slides, is a lot of the features that we're going to be bringing to you in .NET Compact Framework 2.0 are a direct result of customer feedback that we're getting. Every month, members of the product team, including myself, are talking to people on news groups, we're participating in chat sessions, and we're generating a lot of feedback, and we're looking at this and figuring out what features are the ones that everybody wants or that are most important for you. And additionally, in .NET Compact Framework 2.0, we'll be continuing to expose new technology in the form of new classes and language enhancements, and also tools that will make you more productive. We're bringing things from the full framework, the full .NET framework, to the device space. So today, you can download Service Pack 2 from MSDN. It has a number of improvements over our release version. There's faster performance for XML and ADO.NET. And what I was saying in the previous slide for customer requests, some of those are in Service Pack 2 already, including forecolors and back colors for controls. And before Service Pack 2, if you wanted to have a button on your form, you couldn't change its background color. And I don't know how many people are like me, but having a gray button is pretty boring, and I felt like I was sort of being held back. And so last week, I just felt crazy, and I had to make an application to take advantage of some of these. And over on the right side of the screen, you can see an example of my artistry. I don't think people really want to make an application that looks like a Crayola box or a gumball machine, but if you do, you can do that now. Additionally, we'll have keyboard events on common controls, and those keyboard events would include the key up message, the key down, and also key press events. And additionally, Service Pack 2 has support for future devices. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit later slide. In terms of developer adoption, the .NET Compact Framework is the fourth most active news group. And that's a significant fact in that traditionally devices haven't generated a lot the same magnitude of experience and of focus as other groups have. And we think that this is happening because devices are becoming more powerful, they're becoming less expensive, and they're more common. And all those devices need software to drive them, and that's driving a lot of developer interest. And we're also seeing a number of developer-focused websites, and there's a few of them listed there. There's also a specific talk for the OpenNetCF org. And on these websites, you can see all kinds of information. You can see white papers and samples, how-to information. And you can also see that on our mobility site off of MSDN. And on the mobility site, we're getting a lot of hits because people want information direct from the product team, and that's where you can get it. We have how-to information, a lot of the similar things that were on those other sites, but this comes right from the product team. And we also have samples, and there's a great white paper up there that talks about how to do screen orientations, and if you're interested in gaming, you can also get that information there. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the third-party controls and libraries that are available for the .NET Compact Framework 1.0 today. If you want to make a chart, if you want to have a flex grid, Component 1 Studio makes some great controls, and you can see a picture of those on the right side of the screen. If you're interested in having a connected application that's going to be using networking, internet, email, /N has IPworks. It's a special edition for the .NET Compact Framework, and it's written 100% in C# code. And if you want to make an application and you want to develop it and distribute it to your customers, InstallShield has a tool that is integrated right into the Visual Studio shell, and it'll allow you to make shortcuts and registry keys and file associations. And if you're looking for a solution to help you out with some COM interop with our first version of our product, Odyssey Software makes CF-COM, which has the COM interop and also ActiveX hosting. And if you want to protect your IP from people reverse engineering it, Preemptive makes a .Buscator product that'll mangle the names and make it hard for people to find out all the cool stuff you guys are working on putting inside your applications. And this is just a sampling of some of the controls and libraries that are available today. And if you want more information about these vendors and others are out in the exhibition hall right now. You can go check them out. So now I'd like to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about the new features we're bringing to .NET Compact Framework 2.0. And first up is compatibility. And since we're the second version of a product, compatibility is a big thing for us right now. And we're compatible on a number of different levels. The first off would be with classes. Classes, we're compatible on the semantic and also the syntactic level with the corresponding classes in the full framework. And this allows you to bring code and knowledge to the device so that if you have a given property, method, or event in some code that runs on the full .NET framework, that same property, method, or event, if it's supported, will behave the same on the .NET Compact framework. And this is kind of like a 2-for-1 deal. If you know how to do something in one framework, you can use that same information, leverage your existing investment, and use it towards the other framework. We're also compatible with interoperability and protocols. And the .NET Compact framework can generate and consume data from a number of services, including XML serialization, XML schemas, web services, data sets. And if you use any one of these technologies, you can exchange information with both frameworks. Both frameworks work well together. That's the key point for that. Additionally, we're compatible with our first version. There's a number of applications, a number of devices that are shipping now that have .NET Compact Framework 1.0 in ROM. It's built in, it's baked in there. And we want those devices to be able to run .NET Compact Framework 2.0. And to support that, we're going to be running side by side so you can have both versions on the same device working at the same time. And additionally, any applications that you write today with Visual Studio 2003, those applications will work on .NET Compact Framework 2.0. We're doing a lot of work with this. We have a suite of applications that were compiled and built using Visual Studio 2003, and we run those applications on regular builds of our 2.0 framework. But we're not satisfied. We want to make sure all the applications that we can will work on 2.0. And this is where we're asking for some help from you, because everybody who attends MDC will get an invitation for the Visual Studio 2005 beta. And so we're encouraging everyone to sign up for that and try your application on it and tell us if you run into anything, any problems, any issues. Because you're the expert with your application and you can tell us better than we could try it on our own. And we're also doing a lot of work in the area of performance enhancements. Did anybody get a chance to see Scott Holden's performance talk last night? I know the room was pretty full last night. Scott did a great job, and he's got a table in his slide deck that analyzes the difference in performance between each release of the .NET Compact framework. And so I'm not going to go into that. And if you missed the talk, you'll want to watch it on the DVD when it comes out, about 4 to 6 weeks. In terms of extensibility, the .NET Compact Framework 2.0 is supporting COM interoperability. Now this is a big thing because there's native tools and utilities and libraries that you want to use on your device, but right now it's kind of hard to write your own wrappers. And so what we're doing is we're building this into Visual Studio 2005. So then if you want to work with a native library, you'll just add a reference using Visual Studio 2005. And when you add the reference to the native object, Visual Studio will behind the scenes get busy and has a lot of elves working really hard for you, and they'll make wrapper classes that'll support all the complicated COM stuff for you, including add ref and release. You don't have to track any of that. It'll just work for you. And when you're using that native object inside the IDE, you'll be able to benefit from IntelliSense. So if you don't remember what all the members are, you could be typing along, you hit the period key, and a little list will pop up showing you what all the members are, which makes it really easy to use. And if you wanted more information about COM interoperability, I encourage you all to see Stephen Pratchener's talk, Interop with the .NET Compact Framework. It's coming up a little bit later. Stephen does a great job showing you how these runtime wrappers work. He also gets behind the scenes a little bit and tells you how enhanced type marshalling works and what additional work we're doing in that area to support additional types, embedded arrays, and also you could do type hinting with the marshal as attribute. And another customer request that we're fulfilling in 2.0 release is we're exposing the window handles for a lot of our controls. This has been a pretty big customer request. Has anybody here been looking for that? Ah, I see some hands. Yeah, well, you're going to get it now. You're going to like it. It's you can use this window handle to get, you can send a message to your control. You can get a DC. You can also send that window handle to a native application or native utility library, and so you can have better interop. It's going to work a lot better for you. Now, in terms of some of the looking forward kind of features that we're grabbing from the full framework and bringing to the device space is the realm of language support. Now, there's a number of new language features that we're bringing to devices that will make you more productive. Some of these include generics, anonymous methods, iterators, and partial types. Now, let's take a look at some of those. I want to start off with generics. And a couple weeks ago, I didn't really know what generics were, so I'd like to kind of start off. I think there might be some other people who could benefit from this little definition here at the top. Let me just read that, and we can kind of sink in and work through the code sample on the side. Generics are classes and methods that work uniformly on values of different types. And to help explain that, let's go through the little class that represents a stack object on the right side. And you'll notice that there's capital T's inside this code. And what those capital T's are, you should think of those as placeholders for real types. In the past, if you wanted to have a class that would work with more than one type, you would have to use an object, and you have to kind of box and unbox things, and you couldn't use the real type. And some of the places where this would kind of cause problems is that in order to get the real type back out of the object, you would have to cast it. And casting is a runtime operation, and so when you're compiling it, you can't tell if that's going to be a proper thing to do, if it's going to be a valid thing to do, or if your user might get an invalid cast exception. That's not a good thing. We want to find more bugs faster and use the compiler to find them for us and tell us right where that bug is. And so by using generics, you can easily reuse code, because instead of having a separate class for specific types, we can just have one class that has specific types that are implemented by the compiler and the loader for you. So before, I would have a class for integers, I would have a class for strings, and a separate class for each type so that I could get type-safe information. But then if there was a bug in one of those, I would have to manually go back and fix each one of those. And generics is a big thing. I think it's going to save a lot of people a lot of code. So next up, we got anonymous methods. And these are code blocks that are encapsulated in a delegate. And to demonstrate more about what anonymous methods are, I want to go through what life looks like when you don't have anonymous methods. And in the first code example at the top, let's say that you have a button object and it has a click event. And when that click event fires, you want to call a separate function. Say we'll call it process click. And you can see that this requires a whole separate method down there. Now, with support for anonymous methods, what we can do is you have the same kind of syntax. It looks almost the same, except now when you declare your event handler, instead of giving it a reference to another method, you actually have the arguments there inside your event handler. And then, this is where the slick part happens. You have a code block right underneath the declaration for your event handler, and that's where you can put your processing code. And this is something that I really wanted, and I didn't know that this was even going to be a feature. And when I found out about this, I was really happy, because a lot of times, especially for a button click, I just wanted to do something. I just wanted to kick something off. And so if I just want to increment a counter or something like that, it's one line of code, I can put it right there, and I don't have to type another function that's somewhere else. I can keep it all right together. Another language feature that we're bringing is support for partial types. And this class, you have a code function that might have been generated by, might have been emitted by a tool developed by a class architect. And on the right side, we have another class that also appears to define the same class, but this has a different method in it. And this method over on the right could be some code or another function that somebody wants to add to that class. Maybe they're the user. Maybe they're the person who has the code generated for them, and now they want to customize it. And by using the partial keyword in both of these class definitions, the compiler will take those and combine them into a single class. And by keeping these things separate into separate files, you can protect both sides, because neither side wants the other one to be adjusting and kind of playing with the soup as they're making it. So if you're the code generator tool, if you're the class architect, you want to keep the left side just like you see it. You don't want the user to mess with it, because you might want to regenerate it, or you might want to add something to it yourself, but you don't want to disturb the customized code that's on the right side. And so by using partial types, you can get this. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the new controls that we're bringing to the devices. Has anybody here been interested or kind of wanted to use a date time picker? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, month calendar, that's another good one. We have those now in 2.0. We're sorry they didn't make it in the first version. We've got them. They're the first ones that we put in for the second version. Also up, we have a document list, and this is the top left picture. You can see what a document list looks like. You can use it to open files. It's sort of a new open file dialog. But it also has a little fancy background, and also you can have a context menu there, so users can copy files, beam files to their friends. You get a little functionality just for free. It's built into the operating system. And now we're exposing it so you can use it from your managed code. Next, as you kind of go around clockwise, to the right of the document list, you can see a notification bubble. Now, this notification bubble, you might have seen these pop up on your Pocket PC to tell you, oh, your stock went up again, or maybe not. And you could use this notification bubble. Your application can be running in the background, but it wants to display some information to the user. And you can do that through the notification bubble. One thing to note is that the notification bubble can contain more than just text. In the sample there, you can see a link label at the top, and additionally, the text inside the notification bubble can be rich HTML text. So you can have bold, different colored fonts. And you can also have different controls inside the notification bubble, so you can use it kind of like a little quick dialogue if you wanted. We also have support for help files. And on the bottom two pictures, those are examples of a rich ink control. And this is really useful because on a Pocket PC, one of the nice things you could do is you can use your stylus. It's not a mouse. Oftentimes you don't have a keyboard, and you just want to have people enter information just with a stylus like they were writing on a piece of paper. And with a rich ink control, you can write just normal handwriting, and it'll recognize it into text. But it doesn't just recognize any text. It recognizes rich text. You can have different colors. You can have strikeout, different font attributes. And also you can have italic text. So it does a lot of stuff for you. The last three controls are pretty popular. There's a web browser control that will display web pages. And also there's a data container control and a user control. And those will be, you'll see a little bit more of those coming up. Scott Smith will be showing you in the next hour a little bit how these work. He'll show you some actual demos. You can see how all this stuff ties together. And we had so many Windows Forms features, I had to have another slide. We also have clipboard support. And using the clipboard support, you can copy information and exchange information between applications. It doesn't have to be just a managed application. It can also be a native application. And there's more properties, methods, and events that we've been implementing from your requests. And these include double-click event on control. You can have toolbar button tooltips now. So in your toolbar, if you have a little picture of something, but maybe somebody doesn't know what that is, you get a little tooltip now to tell you what that action is. And we also have tree view events that include before and after collapse, and also ensure visible, which allows you to scroll a tree view node into view. So if your tree is really long and there's some node that you want the user to see, you could use the ensure visible method, and that'll bring that thing into view where you can see it. And also a number of new devices now are shipping that have keyboards built in to the device. And along these lines, we're offering better keyboard support. A number of things we're doing include the form key preview event. And this event will allow the form or the container to get the key event before the child control does. And there's a number of ways that you can use this. You can use it to implement, say, like a function key, so that no matter which control has focus, if somebody presses that function key, you can have it do an action in just one spot. You don't have to have all the controls bubbling up events. You can just intercept it. Also, we have a tab index, so you can just specify the tabbing order independent of the Z order of the controls. And also, you can indicate which controls are tabbable with the tab stop property. We're doing a couple things for the smartphone. These include better data support. In the first version, you weren't able to use SQL CE. Now you can. Also, we're supporting the data grid officially in 2.0. And also on the smartphone, we're exposing the input mode editor. Yeah, that's better. And what this does is this allows you to select different modes. So when you're on the keyboard, if you have a text field that say like you want somebody to enter a zip code, you can switch the input mode editor to be numeric only, and then when they press the buttons, it's only going to enter a digit for you. And another thing we're doing is, in the first release, we were restricting people to having only a single menu item on the left soft key. And there are a number of people who kind of run into that. Has that been kind of a couple of people. Yeah, so what we do now is, the reason we were doing that is we were enforcing the SDK, smartphone SDK guidelines. And we decided that it's not our job to be the UI police. So now if you guys want to do that, if you want to have a lot of menu items on the side, that's up to you. You can go for it now. Now, throughout MDC, you might have heard people talking about the new displays and the layouts that are coming. And what this means is that Pocket PC screens and screens in general for smartphones, they're not going to be like they were before. They'll include new features that allow you to switch the orientation of the screen, like you see in the pictures at the top of the slide. The user can push a button and their screen will automatically rotate to a landscape orientation. Additionally, there'll be devices that only have a square screen. So on the left picture, there's a dashed line across that, and that represents a square screen. Everything above there would be the square screen. That's kind of the common area. And so if the screen rotates, things below that dashed line, you might not be able to get to those things unless your application is aware of it, or if you have Service Pack 2. Because in Service Pack 2, this is the support that I was talking about earlier. We're doing things like automatically providing scrolling form contents when your application is not in a portrait mode anymore. Now this is similar functionality to the auto scroll property, but it's not the auto scroll property. It happens for you automatically. So that if you have an application today that you build with Visual Studio 2003, it looks like the screenshot on the left. If your user switches, it's not going to automatically look like the one on the right. You'll have little scroll bars that will still enable you to use your application and get to the buttons and things that are down below the dashed line. And if you want to do something more customized, if you want to make your application relay out the controls, you can use the form resize event. That event fires when the orientation changes. And during that event, you can relay out the controls according to the new screen layout. And if you find your application, well, if your application finds itself running on a screen that has higher DPI than it was designed for, we'll automatically pixel double all your UI elements so that they'll look the same on the higher resolution. And if you want more information about things you can do today to prepare your applications or to be aware of the new devices coming, there's a great white paper on MSDN that describes a lot of different strategies and how you can work your application, things you could do. There's also a hands-on lab right across over there that walks through a couple of the scenarios, and you could do that today. In .NET Compact Framework 2.0, we're building on new ways to new support mechanisms that you could do to do better orientation. The biggest one, and this is what they covered a little bit in the keynote, and also you'll see a little bit of this later on today, is docking and anchoring. And on the right, you can see a couple screenshots of application that uses docking and anchoring. At the very top of that screenshot, you'll see a green label that says dock equals top. And that label, as it says, has its dock property set to the top. And what that does is that pushes the control to the top of its container. And in this case, the container is the form. So when the form changes, like when it rotates to the landscape orientation in the bottom picture, the label automatically grows. Its bounds change, and it fills the top portion of its container. And additionally, you can use anchoring. Anchoring is kind of the other side of docking. What it does, anchoring maintains the spacing between an edge of the control and its container. So as you can see with the pink label, when the orientation changed, the white border, which is the form, looks the same. It has the same spacing when it's rotated to the other orientation. And one tip I'd like to give you is that you could do a lot of things. You can make a great UI using docking and anchoring. And one thing that really helps is to use panels. Panels are like the little thing in your toolbox. It's like the duct tape. You use it for everything. You can use panels to group controls, and inside the panels, each one of those elements inside the panel can be docked or anchored according to how you want it, and then you could dock or anchor the whole panel that contains that group in some other mechanism. Additionally, we're supporting the auto scroll property on forms and panels. And this, you could set this property, and then you can choose whether or not you get scroll bars automatically. We're also including support for suspend and resume layout methods. And you'll want to use these inside the form resize event so that when the sun goes down or the lights change, you can relay out your controls and without having the user watch each control position itself. So you suspend the layout, redo all your controls, and then you call resume layout, and then they'll just pop right where you want to go. Additionally, you can call the change orientation method from inside your application. So you could programmatically control what orientation the screen is in, or you could let the users do it if they don't have a device that has a dedicated button. Also, we have resolution support that includes automatic scaling, so that if you design your application using the designer on one DPI, and your application finds itself running on a different screen with a different DPI, it'll automatically scale and it'll fit and look correct. And if you have drawing that you want to do, if you're drawing your own ellipses, graphic primitives, you can get the current DPI and scale your own drawing through the graphics object, DPI X and DPI Y members. And in the realm of drawing, we have support for lock bits now on bitmap. This is another big customer request. This allows you to get at the actual bits of your bitmap. And so you could do custom things. You could kind of make a little photo application. You could make your image darker. You can make it lighter. You could do a number of things with this. Also, you can save a bitmap now. And this is another big customer request. And we're supporting image.save. And you could select any one of the formats that are listed below there, including JPEG, bitmap, different things. And if you want, you can use a pattern brush now to fill a container. And the way this works is you have a bitmap, might have a smiley face on it. And if you want to paint the background of something, you can use that bitmap. And it's just like having a stamper. You can just dunk, 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 stamp all across there, fill your container with that bitmap. And if you want to make a font that doesn't just go horizontally, you want your font to go up at an angle, say you're making a mapping application, something like that, you can do that now by creating a font from a log font structure. There's an orientation property there, and that's in tenths of a degree. So if you just set it to be 45, it'll be 4.5. Let's keep that in mind. We also have support for custom pens now. So you could have a really wide pen, or you could have a dashed pen. And the thing to note about pen styles is that if you want a dash pen, its width has to be 1. A little note for you. And now I'd like to delve a little bit into the more technical stuff. In control invoke, this is kind of a technical thing that I don't have time to really dig into and explain, but I'll show you how it works in version 1.0, and I'll also show you what we're doing in 2.0. And where you want to use control invoke is if right now there's only one thread and your user interface is running on that thread. And so as Scott was mentioning yesterday, if you have a button that has a click event and you want to do a web service call on there, while the web service, if you do the web service call inside your event handler, your whole UI is going to kind of bog down, and it's going to look to your user like your app might be hung or it's just unresponsive. And so in a case like that, you might want to use your own thread and do the processing on that thread and then communicate results back to the user interface through control invoke. And you have to use control invoke for a number of reasons that I'm not going to go into, but if you want more details on that, I have a couple links to MSDN articles on the slides. In version 1.0, the .NET Compact Framework, we supported the event handler delegate only. And so the code that you use in Visual Studio 2003 looks like the code at the bottom of the screen. And the way this works is you create a new thread, and inside your thread, you declare an event handler, and it's just like hooking up an event for, so like a click event, but what you want to do is you want to do your custom processing. You want to marshal your processing back to the user interface thread. And you do that by using the invoke property that's on control. And the code sample below, the invoke call will marshal the update progress bar method so that everything that happens in update progress bar is happening and running on the user interface thread. So by doing that, your application is not going to stop responding, which is really bad. And in .NET Compact Framework 2.0, we're building on the support for control invoke. In the previous slide, some of the things you couldn't do, you can now do with our new support. You're not restricted to event handler delegates anymore. You can make your own you can make your own custom delegate, and that looks like the little box there where it declares a public delegate that returns an integer, and it's called myDelegate. It takes one parameter, that's a string. Now you couldn't do this before. There's other ways in 1.0 framework. You can kind of work around this, and there's explanations in those white papers I had links for. We're also including asynchronous support so that if you want to execute something, if you want to have your thread start, if you want to start a marshalling call and then do some more processing and then get back, we support, you could do that through begin invoke and end invoke. And the way that works is in the code sample on the bottom half of the screen. You call begin invoke and you send it your delegate, which could be a custom delegate. In this case, it's the delegate that was declared at the top of the screen. And you want to pass it, because that delegate takes a string, you want to pass it a string. And the way you do that is by making an object array. So you wrap up your parameters in the object array, and you send that through control.beginInvoke. And everywhere where it says this, it's referring to the form. And the form is a control, so it's getting marshaled back to the GUI thread. And when you call beginInvoke, you can catch the result inside an async result object. And so when you, at a later time, when you're done doing your processing, if you want to find out what the result was of your invoke call, you can get that by calling endInvoke and casting the result back. Another thing we're doing that in the realm of threads that's unique to the .NET Compact framework is if you forget to use control invoke and you didn't know you needed to use control invoke, we'll be throwing an exception to tell you you needed to use control invoke. I think this is going to be a big time saver because instead of your application stop responding or hanging, now you'll get an exception that'll tell you there's a problem and you can figure out a lot faster what's going on. And so now, I'd like to invite my friend Scott Smith up. Scott Smith is a lead program manager for Visual Studio for Devices. He's going to be demonstrating how some of these things that I've just been talking about work in Visual Studio 2003.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Let me switch over to my laptop here. And here you see up on the screen Visual Studio .NET 2005. And we're still in the early stages. This is the build that I have here is a little bit newer than the build that you'll be getting here at the conference, but you'll be able to do many of the same things that I'll be showing you here. What I want to do is show off a few of the features that Mike talked about earlier in terms of new controls and how those controls can be bound to forms. And first off, let me just show you a couple of things. You'll notice in the design time right here that if you've used the current version of Visual Studio, that the design surface looks substantially different. Now we have the form that looks like a Pocket PC form. It's wrapped by a skin that looks like the Pocket PC project that we're in, and this is great. And it also, what we've also provided is the ability to see the controls that look and feel like the controls on your device as well. Now, Mike mentioned a couple of new controls. One that's kind of cool to see is the month calendar control. If I drag and drop that onto the form, you can say, hey, this looks exactly like what I'm looking for. So the design time experience is pretty exciting. I was looking at this earlier, and there's some cool things, even like if you hover over the skin, it goes through this alpha blending stuff. I don't know that that's really valuable in developing the application, but it looks really cool. So anyway, I'm going to delete this guy. As cool as he is, we're going to do something else. What I want to show you is creating a very simple web browser application. And in doing that, I'm going to use the web browser control, and I'm going to use some of the new properties that are associated with these new controls. So to build this web browser application, I'm going to start with a little address bar and then throw on the web browser control. Mike mentioned something about this panel control, the duct tape of all duct tapes for the compact framework. Well, we're going to start with that. Drop that on the form. And then I want to dock this control to the top of the form. And when I choose the dock property for the control, you notice I have this little mini designer that lets me choose whether I want to dock to the top, the bottom, left, right, or center. And I'll choose to dock to the top. And voila. Now I want to add some controls to this panel. First, I'm going to add a label control. And the label control, I just need to set the text of that to say address, so that you know that you're going to put the address here. And then I want this to dock to the left-hand side of my panel. And there we go. So I also need to be able to execute my application. And so I need a button. Let's add a button quick. And this button I need to modify some. So let's dock it to the right-hand side. And then we'll change the text. I'll even add an exclamation point. But you know what? The exclamation point just isn't enough. I'd really like to have this stand out. So out comes the infamous back color property. Let's see if we can use that to our advantage here. And there we go. Nice green button. So let's just do a little bit more sizing stuff here to make it look good for us. Last thing I need is a text box to be able to put the URL that I'm going to call for my web browser application. And I'll take that and dock it full inside of the panel. And then resize this panel. Okay, looking pretty good so far. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to make this a little bit more colorful. Let's take advantage of this back color property. And so I'm going to set the back color of the form to a nice shade of blue. And then now we're going to put the web browser control on the form. So let's go grab that. And you can see I've placed this on the form such that I have a slight border around it. And I'd like to maintain this border. So this is where the other property that Mike talked about called anchoring comes in. And here we have a new little mini designer in the properties window, and I can set it to anchor to each side. And now we're nearly there. Before we finish off, though, I want to show you at design time how we can test our application so that we can make sure that it works well in landscape mode. Now, you may have seen this in the keynote this morning, but it's just very cool. It's fun to do. If I have the form selected, then I can rotate the form, or the whole form inside the designer, and you can see that all of the controls mapped correctly to the new layout. Let's just move that back and do one last hookup of code. We just need now to set the web browser controls URL to the value of the text box. Let's do that. Web browser 1 dot URL is equal to textbox.text. Oops, that looks not like text. Does that look better? Actually, I think I need a capital T. How about that? Okay, back to design. Well, let me do one more thing to make it easier here. I'm going to change the value of the text box so that it goes to an actual URL. So and with that, I think I have everything in place for me to actually compile and run this application. Does it look good so far? Okay. So let's just run the application, and it will go and it will compile in the background. And while this is getting ready, I actually need to send it to the Pocket PC, so I'll deploy that to Pocket PC. While it deploys, I'm going to switch over to my Elmo device, which is on number 4. And what you'll see is the application deploying down to the device. And, oh, you know what? I've lost my ActiveSync connection. So let me, no, the easiest way to fix this is to just come here and reset it like this. Are we still straight? I love it. Give it a minute. Say, nope, I want to reconnect. And it's not going to like me here. So now we go into the what you would have seen mode. Here we go. Here we go. We're going to get connection. We're going to redeploy. And if everything goes well this time, I have my ActiveSync connection. You should see a little... the demo gods are with me. They just came late. So what you'll see is the application get loaded and launched on the device. And then I'll be able to go and hit that Go button eventually. This is just too much fun. So we'll just let that continue timing down. So what I've shown you here, though, is the ability to quickly use Visual Studio for devices to create an application that takes advantage of new features within the .NET Compact framework, including new control properties, landscape designers, etc., and be able to build applications very quickly using our new tool set. And with that, I'm going to actually turn the time back over to Mike. Maybe I'll try to fix this while I'm standing here, and he can we can take it from there. Okay. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Scott. It's still going. It's still going.
It's the Energizer Bunny.
It is. All right. We'll come back to the Elmo if he fires up here in a little bit. So there's a couple more things that I'd like to tell you all about. The area of networking and web services. The most exciting thing here is system.messaging. And that's so exciting, I have another slide just for that. We'll get to that in a minute. There's also some things we've done for web services. Web services are getting a performance boost from the faster XML serializer. So your web services will be able to serialize information and deserialize it faster in .NET Compact Framework 2.0. We also have support for a new SOAP standard, 1.2. And we have an enhanced authentication. And what this is, we're adding 2 more modes of authentication to network credentials. We're adding Kerberos and NTLM, which is the built-in Windows authentication method. And one slick thing that I've learned is that when you make a network credential and you wire that up into your web service, like in the little code sample below, that .NET Compact Framework will automatically select the most secure authentication method available on the server. And so what this means is that that code that's on the screen, the little code sample window, that code doesn't change if the server changes. So some guy on the server can decide, well, I think this week we're going to use Kerberos. and you write your code, your application works great, and then the server guy says, well, I think we want to use NTLM now. And so if that guy changes how the server authenticates, your device code doesn't change at all. It'll automatically renegotiate the next time a connection is made and use the most secure authentication method available. And here's system messaging. Now this is the same system messaging class that's on the full .NET framework. And what this provides a solution for bi-directional communications when your device might or might not have a reliable connection. Now this is very important because with these little devices that you can put in your pocket, take them around, you might not always have a connection available to you, but you still want to be able to communicate. And so the way system messaging works is in the little diagram below. In the blue box that represents the device, you have your .NET Compact Framework application running. And when it wants to send a message, what it's going to do is it's going to send that message to a queue that's inside the operating system. The queue is not part of the .NET Compact Framework. It's part of the operating system. And the way this works, your messages, queue up in the queue. And when a device has connectivity available to it, those messages will automatically be transferred to the server application, and you can also get messages from the server onto your device. And the nice thing about this is it's very robust. You can reset your device. You have messages in your queue. You can reset your device. Your application doesn't have to be running. The messages are in the queue. That's part of the operating system. I think you can do pretty much anything except drive over your device with your car, and the messages will still get through. You can also, for your messages, they're transactional. And this means that you either get the whole message or no message. And you can also set priorities and timeouts on these messages. This is really exciting technology, and I'm hoping that when I get back to Redmond, I'll be able to write an application using this because I got a lot of ideas that I want to put to use here. For System XML, we support serialization now. And one great place where you can use that is you can use it to serialize a live object. And say you have an application and your user, you want to allow your user to customize things, you can make a class that will hold all of your different settings. And I like colors a lot, so I probably have background colors in there, all kinds of different stuff. You make a class, and if you want to persist those settings, you can serialize them out to an XML file, and then when your application runs again, it could deserialize those into an object that's really easy for you to use. We also have schema support now. And one of the big places where schemas are really valuable, there's a big time savings for being able to validate data from XML with your constraints in the XML. So say you read in some XML data and you get a date field, but you want to make sure that date field is within a certain range. Now, if you couldn't use the schemas, you would have to write code that would say, well, if the date is bigger than this, do an exception, or if your date is smaller than this, do something else. But by validating it against the schema, all these fields that you're reading in will be verified for you. There's also a number of powerful data tools that are built into Visual Studio 2005. And Scott will be talking about those right after this session coming up here in a little bit. There's also a number of great things that are coming in the realm of SQL CE 3.0. And you might have heard a little bit about the SQL CE result set. This is a great thing. It saves you memory. You don't have 3 copies of data in your memory anymore. Before, you used to have the database, a cache, and also the data set, which is 3 copies of that thing on your small device. But using the SQL CE result set, you only have 1 copy. You just talk directly to the database, and it's bindable, it's typable, there's all kinds of good stuff. If you want to learn more about that, you want to see Kevin Collins' talk coming up later, where he talks about Laguna and the new features in SQL CE 3.0. We also have support And one last thing I just got to get in here is the storage engine also supports multiple users and multiple connections. So you could have multiple applications accessing the same SQL database at the same time. And you can also have one application that's using threads, different threads. So you can have one thread where the user interface, somebody's entering new data, and at the same time, another thread, maybe a user thread that you created, and that's updating the database in the background. And we're doing a couple other things here with class libraries. We have support for serial ports with 4 ports. These are really, there's a lot of people wanting serial port support. You can use serial ports for GPS and automating machinery. And there's also a number of people using serial ports to drive little robotic devices. And you can also support, we also have support inside the emulator now. So when you're writing your application that's using serial ports, you can use it in the emulator to faster develop your application. And building on the generic support that we talked about earlier, we'll have generic collections, including array lists and hash tables. And also we have cryptography support. And I'm not sure what that first bullet there says, but we'll have to kind of work on that. But you can use cryptography for things like encrypting your messages that you send between applications, passwords, and other sensitive data. And so to summarize things, I want to reiterate that today you can still make great applications using Visual Studio 2003 and the first version of .NET Compact Framework. Also, we're listening to your requests, and if there's some feature that I didn't cover here, it might be in the product, but we would love to hear about it from you. So if you get a chance, stop by our booth and let us know what you're thinking, what other things you want in there. And lastly, the .NET Compact Framework 2.0 is delivering great features from the full .NET framework, and we're making it easier for you to develop with language enhancements and new classes, and it's getting better all the time. And so lastly, there's a couple other things. This is just an overview session, but if you want more detailed information, there's a number of other talks that are coming up that you can see. Next, Scott Smith is going to be doing, do you like demos? He has a lot of demos in his talk.
Hopefully it'll work better.
Yeah, he has all kinds of demos, and he promises they're going to work better. And if you missed Scott Holden's talk yesterday about performance tips and tricks, make sure you watch for that when the DVD comes. And for COM Interop, look for Stephen Pratchener's talk about interop with the .NET Compact Framework. He has a lot of little examples that show you how to marshal data between managed and native code. And there's the Laguna edition of the SQL Server. And also there's a whole talk just on developing screen-aware applications and the hands-on lab that's out just outside the door here. So I think I'm about out of time.
Look over the floor. See what happens on the floor. You're about out of time.
Oh, yeah. We want to check to see if Elmo is...
Did Elmo survive?
Oh,
look at that.
It did work. It did work.
There you go. So it worked. Demo gods came really, really late to this session. There you go.
All right. So thanks a lot. You've been a great audience. And make sure you fill out those evaluation forms. Thanks.